Thank you so much for joining us today. Aleksandra is a futurist, philosopher, AI and machine learning expert who was recently appointed by Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, to his Future Council. She is also the Vice-Rector for Innovation and AI at Kozminski University and a Senior Research Associate on AI, robotics, and the future of work at the Center for Labor and a Just Economy at Harvard Law School. And she's co-written several books, including Collaborative Society, which I enjoyed, and Debating Universal Basic Income, Strategizing AI in Business and Education, among many others. So the theme for today's conversation is how can we set the story straight on AI? But we will dive into many areas around that as well. So to get started, we know that sometimes the map bends reality. Where do you see the biggest discrepancies between the reality of AI and how we talk about it?
That's a great question. So, since many of you are practitioners of marketing, I think what you've managed to observe over the course of those past 3 years was a major hype on AI. And that hype is quite interesting because usually it's very much, I would say, disconnected from reality, in the sense that when you track back what people have talked about last year in artificial intelligence, it was mostly the topic of general artificial intelligence and next threshold of AI. So what we have is some form of narrow AI that is capable at solving various tasks for us. And sometimes, there is a possibility to transfer that knowledge to new domains. And in that way, AI becomes more capable of solving multiple different problems or tasks at the same time. But nonetheless, general artificial intelligence was, back in the day, or like, let's say a decade ago, 2 decades ago, a very conceptual term to describe the type of AI that would achieve human level of intelligence. And it's been very much hyped about because there were many speculations about when we would achieve that moment. And then suddenly it vanished. People stopped talking about general artificial intelligence. Some are saying that we've just simply achieved it. Some others are claiming that it's absolutely not the case because AI is far better at some tasks than humans are, but there are some other tasks that are very trivial for us, like tying our shoes, that no robot can really do well, right? And there are many aspects of our intelligence, embodied intelligence, perceptual intelligence, where AI is nowhere close to humans. So, I mean, I actually am in that group that believes that we have not achieved general artificial intelligence, but what I wanted to emphasize is I think that you have those topics in AI that are becoming important for a certain while. And I think the reason for that is to maybe make AI more prominent as a theme of discussions and make sure that people are excited about the next phase. And then we kind of move elsewhere, right? So after general artificial intelligence, we've had some speculations about super intelligence. So maybe we have achieved AGI already, and now we're moving forward. Then that got dropped as well. And currently, I think a topic that is, to my kind of understanding, according to my observations, the one that is most hyped about is robots, physical artificial intelligence. You see humanoid robots everywhere. Races between AI and humans, and there's a lot of AI washing happening in that space because many of these robots are shown as extremely capable of some things, but apparently they're just capable of that during that little reel or video that we see on the social media, whereas in reality it's not so good. You see many robots. There was recently a funny Polish robot, Edward, that was chasing like wild hogs in Poland, and that became viral, even landed on Wired. It's just like what you never see on those photos is that he's actually managed by a person that is right behind him, and it would not have worked otherwise. And that's like, the omitted part. So, Anna, to your question, I think artificial intelligence as a discipline of scientific inquiry is definitely in a different place than the whole realm of narratives around AI that are to some extent also accelerated by tech companies that obviously want that interest and want that attention. So they constantly come up with new topics, but then they sort of drop them. For me as a scientist, I would really want to know, okay, so what happened to the AGI? Where are we standing on that? But this year it's not in fashion to ask about it anymore. So yeah, I would say these are two very different, distinctive realities.
And in marketing, obviously, we're playing a big role in the language that gets used, at least with the products and services that we're promoting. Do you feel that has reached an unhelpful level in terms of the AI washing that's out there? Are we playing a role in this kind of unregulated hype in this area?
Well, it's kind of interesting because this unregulated hype has caused a lot of polarization. So, in fact, I think it has contributed, maybe on a positive note, to a more realistic assessment of the technology itself by the users. So what I'm observing, not sure if you guys see that too, is a lot of backlash against AI. And I saw recently sort of an influencer on the social media on Instagram who considers herself a mentor, a spiritual guide for people. And she sort of, released a new video where she said that she doesn't have the time and capabilities to actually, mentor everybody who would like to subscribe to her services. So she's now going to launch an AI application where her replica, sort of her digital double, will be giving out the, guidance and spiritual sort of tips on how to progress to people. And then I kind of tracked back like all the comments, and they were mostly negative. So people were extremely frustrated with that fact. They said, you subscribe to it, you are in fact, a traitor to our whole movement. How could you even do that? I think 2 years ago, it wouldn't have happened. Probably there would be a lot of curiosity. But I think what happened is exactly what you mentioned, Anna, that maybe the hype turned into a situation or phenomenon of an overhyped thing, where some people are already somewhat allergic to AI-generated content, be it text, video, or anything else. And they have a certain hostility towards AI-related stuff because there's just too much of it. And I'm not sure if they always discovered the value from it. So they feel, okay, if this mentor is not even showing up for me, just sends a digital double, does that mean that this mentor disrespects me? And I feel that this is happening. So what you're seeing is that, well, all the products are supposed to be AI enabled. There should be AI in everything, essentially. But then on the other hand, on the audience side, I think there's much more scrutiny on whether that AI capability that you've just developed for this product is really helpful. And people ask more questions. On that note, I can maybe add that I have this extremely gifted PhD candidate. Oh, no, he's actually already an assistant professor. He recently defended his PhD. Okay, so, but Conrad, my former student, who has done a lot of research on shadow AI, so sort of how people use AI in organizations, whether they're trying to override, the company policy on AI, what tools to use, which ones are recommended, which ones they should not use at all. And he was researching attitudes towards artificial intelligence. It's a recent work, and mostly in bigger telecommunications companies, pharmaceutical companies, and the banking sector. And it turned out that, in most of these organizations, there was a group of people extremely enthusiastic about AI. These people would use frontier stuff quite often and would really try and understand how AI works for their specific use cases, where it would work best, etc. There was always some sort of late majority that was ambivalent, right? So they were not particularly excited about AI, but the company would communicate, yes, this is something that we want to do now, so that they would sort of enroll. But there was also this very interesting and prominent group of around 20% of the whole, of the whole population of the employed people, who were not very happy about AI, but they were also not unaware. So it was not so that they would not know how to use artificial intelligence and therefore hesitated or were unhappy with it. but it was more so, an attitude that came from the fact that they were sort of well aware of the privacy issues, maybe threats to the labor market that AI poses and other things, and they would just be resistant towards it. But they were not unaware. They were very mindful. They knew of, capabilities of this technology. And that, I think, translates to wider audiences. Many people use AI. In Europe, I think, like 60% of Generation Z uses AI on a daily basis for various tasks, and even for other generations, that those groups of people who are using AI frequently is increasing. And I think what we see here is not a naive audience anymore. We see an audience that is really trying to understand better whether that's for the good, whether that would translate to any type of ROI, or is it just like a marketing trick?
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people are just using it in their daily lives and have kind of integrated it in small ways. And then some people, particularly in marketing, have really tried to lean in and learn how it can improve their working lives at a deeper level.
Yeah.
Most people are using it, whether they even consciously think about it or not. And the influencer you mentioned touches on an area that I'm personally concerned about, which is the worrying shift towards people having relationships with AI, like, turning to them for companionship, friendship, coaching. I find that just really bizarre, but obviously some people are needing that and seeing that as a way to get their needs met emotionally. Do you see AI as reshaping humans' relationships with ourselves and each other?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although here, it's also kind of has to be a very nuanced conversation, I think, because I really understand how you can, in a very meaningful way, use artificial intelligence as a tutor or as a coach or as your critic, even as we've done with one of our recent books. My colleague Tamila and I, we wrote a book, Converging Minds, and we used AI critics. So we were writing ourselves. That was our intention. We didn't want to delegate to AI, but then we created an AI critic that was criticizing, sort of everything we wrote. And it was very helpful. I think it elevated the book, and it was a really great use of this technology. And I'm sort of also developing with my university back home in Poland and a couple of other universities in different parts of Europe, this whole capability of using AI tutors in education. So let's say you have a class and not everything lands well with the students. Sometimes they don't understand what you've said, but when you have this AI tutor, it can maybe simplify some content or explain it better or in a different way, and it can be really a helpful resource. And I actually do have a digital double too. So I have this avatar of me that can help in preparations for the exam with me, right? So before you actually meet with me for, let's say, an oral exam, it can ask you questions, and you can also ask it back. And it's really well trained on my slides, my presentations, and I think it's a helpful resource. So I would say in that way, artificial intelligence can be super interesting. And I know for many people who are thinking about the next career move, AI can be, again, very interesting as a support. Even in therapy, I hear from therapists who are using AI as a support tool, but for the real therapy. And I think that real component is very important here. So when you have a human in the loop or human at the center and AI as an intermediary or support, then I think there's no point of concern that this can be really a very, very spectacular use of this technology in positive ways. But you're right, Anna, that I think maybe some of it went too far in the sense that you have this extremely sycophantic sometimes technology. ChatGPT is the most prominent example of a people pleaser, right? Always giving you compliments. It's by design, right? So, I mean, OpenAI is very clear about the fact that they wanted an engaging technology that you feel comfortable with, and where you sort of suspend the belief that it's just a technology. That part for me is problematic, where you are entering that illusion that there's someone on the other side who cares about you, who wants good things for you, and therefore you form a more kind of robust, maybe deeper relationship with it in a romantic way, or even as a friend. I think that there was recent like statistics here in the state of Massachusetts, we as parents got information that I think over a half of the kids in middle school have an AI companion and they use it on a daily basis. So they have this extra AI friend. And I think, well, to some extent, this can still be okay if you supervise it and if there are real friends. But if it's a replacement for your real friends, then I think we have to be mindful of the fact that it's just a simulation. There are no affective responses on the side of this AI to whatever problems you have or whatever worries you have. This is just like a conversational tool with no emotions. And that I think is a problem, especially that most of these companies have decided, like I mentioned, that that this is going to be the design, that people strive for real connection, and we have to make sure that they enter this immersive world where they really feel that they are connected to artificial intelligence. So there are lots of conversations here in the US about the protection of minors and possibly new guardrails where people, particularly young, vulnerable audiences would be reminded that this is a tool, this is a bit of a game, a conversational game that you're entering, but it's certainly not so that this is your real friend who will tell you when you did something wrong and who will be honest with you in many ways. It's just AI. So yeah, like I think that shift is very big. And just one final remark is, there's clearly growth in AI dating. There are many applications. Some of it present themselves as a training before real life dating, sort of prototyping the experience of dating, which again is something that can be justified, can be interesting. Like, I don't know, you can practice for public speaking with artificial intelligence, and that will alleviate some of the stress, and maybe it's a good prep for a real situation. But when this is all that there is, right, it's just you and AI, then clearly that's an issue.
And I can definitely see how AI tutors would be helpful. I was extremely shy in school, and so I would not speak up even if I didn't understand something. So I can imagine some people would be much more comfortable actually asking questions until they actually.
Yes. And if I may add to this, because for you, maybe as marketers, this will be very interesting. There's a growing body of research that shows that actually people are more open as respondents to AI surveys, right? So when it's a survey, for instance, that is conducted by artificial intelligence, or even an interview conducted by AI, people tend to open up a bit more because they don't feel judged. So that's why I'm saying that it's a very nuanced discussion, because there are some benefits. For instance, I think one of you, maybe it was Mel, mentioned those entry-level workers. And when I hear that most of those kids who have just left college and are starting, their search on the job market, that they essentially take part in AI recruitment, usually don't make it to the short list. I think it's a very bad first experience on the job market. Shouldn't be like that. However, when we're talking about responses to various questions that are, I don't know, related to, some sort of product that you have been using, or like, in research, including marketing research, where you can conduct a survey, and if you believe that people would share a bit more because it's AI and they feel it's a bit safer for them to share more also negative stuff, then that potentially is an interesting tool. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making it any easy for you, but like I just feel it's case by case. It's very case specific, and we have to be sensitive to that. Sometimes the use of AI will be beneficial to all sides, and sometimes it will be just a major failure.
In terms of what you were saying about recruitment, I read an article recently about how AI recruiting tools are favoring CVs that have been written by AI rather than humans. And it's favoring ones that have been written by their specific type of AI. So if it's written by ChatGPT and ChatGPT is the reader, they'll prefer that over others. If it's DeepSeek, vice versa, so on. So it's become a ridiculous situation where it's AI recruiting AI, and the humans have basically been filtered out of the system, which seems a little bit ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially that I think that, For me, it's the other way around. And probably I would say for many people who read CVs, when I recruit, I want to see some originality. I would actually appreciate a person who has put some effort into writing their CV, even if it's not perfect. I had a conversation with my students recently. I told them, okay, you have this homework and you're free to use AI in whatever way you want. But just please remember, because it's, it's a meta type of task. It's not just about you using AI and submitting an essay. My, sort of my field of observation is going to be what you did and how you made your decisions. So you can use it fully and delegate to artificial intelligence. You can delegate some stuff to artificial intelligence and collaborate with it, and then show me what you've done. Have a, I don't know, present a set of reflections on which models have worked, maybe show me some of your prompts, and then I'll know more of how you use the tool. Or you can just write by yourself. And I also told them that AI is this great equalizer. So I will likely get many similarly good papers written mostly by AI. Does it make you stand out? Well, not really. If you overuse AI, you're just going to be generically good, sort of like other people. And I think it really made them think. And some people did submit very imperfect papers. Obviously, it's hard for me to scrutinize whether they've been using AI, then humanized AI content, and then just, send to me something that looks human written, but was in fact generated by AI. But I would rather say that they have really tried to write it by themselves. And these were distinctively different essays. And I actually would say that in the future, I mean, my bet is that if this continues, this overusage of AI in recruitment and hiring continues, we will see fairly negative results very soon, because there will be many people who, for instance, will not have the expertise that was declared on the CV. AI is very good at leveling expertise, but on a surface level. So, I mean, I can obviously, if I don't know something, I can use AI for it, and I can supplement my lack of knowledge with it. But, when it comes to real life, I'm not going to pretend that, I know these things. And I think it really shows at some point. So I would say this is not a very promising avenue, what you mentioned, Anna. And in the long run, probably it will not work in high quality hiring.
Yeah, you've raised so much in terms of human discretion. Um,
Yeah.
as the economy has become more financialized over recent decades, the percentage of people who feel they have a high level of task discretion in their work seems to have fallen. And that seems to be the case at managerial level, not just shop floor level. One of our previous guests, the economist Will Hutton, expressed concerns that AI is primarily being channeled into creating efficiency savings. So I would also associate with the financialization of the economy, because it's always quicker and easier from a financial perspective to make a case for an efficiency saving than for creating greater effectiveness by just doing something differently or more creatively and so on, because you don't know the benefits of that in advance. Whereas if you can reduce your costs by 25%, you can demonstrate the business case in advance. Do you think we'll become sort of more fragile as the space for human discretion gets squeezed out by AI? I mean, you talked about the problem with entry-level jobs, and that's preventing the accumulation of new human discretion in the first place by removing people's ability to learn their way into particular expertise, and all of that procedural knowledge that, like tying your shoelaces, as you said earlier, is not something that you can explain. It's something that you have to learn by doing, and that you can't really translate into an AI environment.
Yeah. Well, I will say that here in the US, the labor market statistics confirm exactly the trend that you mentioned, Paul, which is that entry-level workers really have a hard time landing a good job. And I'm obviously here in Cambridge, next to Harvard Square. MIT is just 2 blocks away, sort of, and even these people struggle, right? Young students who, are trying to land a good job, coming from MIT, have a hard time finding something. So it really, I think, speaks volumes. And again, for me, some of what's happening, and feel free to disagree. some of what's happening has to be regulated to some extent. There have to be some responses to it, policy-related responses, and to a large extent data-driven. If we see that this is a growing trend on the labor market, then it has to be addressed, not just left like that. And for me, it's also true that it's very hard, to really pinpoint the impact of AI on the labor market right now, because beyond entry-level jobs, you have a lot of confusion. Okay, you have layoffs in the tech sector, but the tech sector has been overhiring for many years. So now you can say it's a correction. You have a hiring freeze, but it's polycausal. It's related to the tariffs here in the US, geopolitical, insecurity, and essentially, many other things. So the only tangible trend that we really see is the one that's related to entry-level jobs. And here, surveys, interviews are clear. It's just that these jobs are not appearing because there is a tendency to delegate exactly that type of clerical or assistive work to artificial intelligence. But in Europe, I would say there are considerations about how to make an internship something important for the organization, how to incentivize internships and entry-level jobs so that we can have senior people, like you said, in the end, that have experienced the organization, have worked with it. The other discussion that I think is unfortunately not progressing as fast as it should is that maybe some of that entry-level job is something that has to happen during your university formation, that universities have to change what they've been teaching, how they've been dealing with the fact that they're then releasing that person to the job market. Maybe that person has to come prepared. Maybe it's part of our curriculum. If we want to survive as well as universities, as colleges in this perplexing world, how to intertwine our teaching with a real practice that happens beforehand so that the person that we're sending off to the labor market is already more advanced. Maybe that's part of the discussion. But back to the question of efficiency versus effectiveness or productivity, here again, I understand that there is that temptation to gain efficiency, and in some areas, it's going to be really spiking. In IT, clearly, people are not doing coding at all anymore. That's not their job. They're orchestrating or supervising AI agents that are writing the code, but then obviously they are the recipients of that work, and they have to take responsibility for it. So, I think there will be less work in IT, but the one that will remain will be, difficult. I would say difficult and full of responsibilities of managing tribes of AI agents that have delivered the work to you, and you have to say, well, that's fine, or intervene at some point. So there are areas where the spike of efficiency is dramatic, is incredible. There are many areas, however, where that has not happened. There was a report, I think, by the MIT Sloan School, I think a couple of months ago, that said that most pilot projects in organizations, when it comes to using generative AI or early agentic versions of AI, have not been so successful. In some areas you would see, yes, big changes in how people work and how fast they are, and productivity measured in time was also, rapidly increasing. But in many other areas, it was not really working so well, right? Because AI is not so good at some things that people are very good at. So I just feel like betting fully on efficiency in many areas may not be the best idea. And in our research, the one that we did, actually, we have done as a team a lot of research on marketers. And we have this notion of collaborative AI, so the type of AI that you, in fact, really work with, that you supervise, that you feel responsible for. We prep our study participants, to kind of really not delegate too much, but rather supervise AI work and just take some of it that's meaningful, but then also add their part. And here we saw an impressive, growth of productivity, objective productivity, but qualitative, right? So, there was an assessment by human judges of the work performed by people who are working by themselves as opposed to working with AI. Turned out that the group that has worked with AI, but in that way, that collaborative way, had a 40% spike in productivity. And that is, I think, super meaningful. When you have an efficient, well-working human AI collaboration, you have people who know what is the potential, but also limitations of this technology and add some reflexivity and critical thinking to it, suddenly you see that, the work that they've been presenting is really well done, and that the division of labor between humans and AI is smart. So they know exactly where to send AI, where AI is really good at something, let's say some sort of market inquiry or like competitive advantage comparison, right? Data driven. But then when it comes to copywriting, they actually put their hearts into creating a meaningful piece of communication by themselves, and they were not relying on generic AI. And so when you have a healthy division of labor, suddenly you see things that are going beyond just pure efficiency. And in creative sectors, I think that's important as well.
I mean, in terms of relying on things, of course, one of the other dangers with AI, or risks that people perceive with AI, is becoming increasingly dependent on a very small number of businesses who are very good at extracting any value that they help you to create. Every time I've listened to you speak, you've been in a different exciting location, somewhere different in the world. Although you're at Harvard right now, we mentioned at the start, Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland, has asked you to join the Council for the Future. Can you tell us a little bit about what your priorities are for that? How it relate to the idea of technological sovereignty, what that might mean for Poland, where Poland sits in Europe, and actually where Europe needs to be?
Well, so I'm here essentially all the time. So I'm connecting with that council, sometimes I'm left off because I'm, one of the few people connecting, and they're sitting there and convening with the prime minister. But obviously, we're trying to be as much as involved as possible. And I think what I'm bringing to the table is indeed that comparison between how the US labor market reacts to artificial intelligence, and and kind of trying to position Europe maybe slightly differently. I would say that my assessment is that even though things are not going as fast in Europe, it sort of creates a certain shield, weirdly enough, or like an umbrella that can protect us from also negative aspects of AI's introduction to the labor market. And in the US, things are going really fast. And as we've spoken, Paul, just before the interview, I think there's no other place where the sentiment towards artificial intelligence is as negative as in the US. If there's someone from the US joining, I'm happy to kind of hear their opinion on it. But my point is that there is zero shielding here. The things are going really fast. As you said, there are a couple of companies that are really pushing hard for making this technology better and more specialized, and they're very open at communicating it. For instance, Dario Amodei from Anthropic recently stated that in 3 years from now, there will be no white-collar work for humans at all. And when you hear something like that, you're starting to ask yourself a question, okay, so how will the economic model look like, particularly in a country that is so reliant on purchasing power of the humans who live here? So it's a purchasing power related economy here. It's a consumption related economy in the US. So if you have people who have no jobs and they don't work and they rely on some sort of subsidies, how is that going to move forward? And like I mentioned before, some of these things require answers, I think, from the government as well. And we don't get to see them yet, at least. And the backlash is certainly very real. I think in Europe, well, obviously we've been criticized as Europe as not as innovative, not as fast, not chasing the peloton, right? China and the US in our ambitions, but clearly things are also changing. I think Europe is gradually building its technological stack, and obviously Poland wants to be an important player here. Recently joined G20, so obviously, it's a big moment for the country, and the aspirations are there too. And I think as a whole, Europe is trying or is starting to treat the concept of technological sovereignty slightly more seriously. And France is an interesting example for me. France is really hard, and on it and pushing really hard for using French models like Mistral Even in organizations, I have encountered many people from French companies who just openly admit that their company is using Mistral, and that's the policy, to use a French model, and to use also French tools for video connections and for like teleconferencing and some other things. So what I think is that in the world with such fractured alliances, the transatlantic alliance is definitely, you know, different from what it was, suffering, I think, in many ways. You have to have a plan B. So even if your tools are not the best, I have heard statements like, what's the point of building AI in Europe? We're too far behind anyway. But that just like makes no sense to me. I think Europe has to invest in artificial intelligence. There are, by the way, interesting models in Europe. There's a Swiss model called Apertus, completely transparent, open weights, open data, everything open. The French model, Mistral, is also open source. You have, in Poland, we have two models. One of them deployed for the public administration, the open one just recently joined NVIDIA stack. So I would say it's a worthwhile effort. And this is what we're trying also to transmit to our prime minister, who I think really understands it well, that those investments have to happen. And over-reliance is just simply now a threat. So even if we're slower, there's definitely you know, a good rational and good arguments for building local models or smaller models on smaller languages or languages that are spoken, you know, by sort of not such robust populations. So yeah, like I think in that way, this is what we're trying mostly to advance in those discussions with the prime minister. The other thing is obviously the impact on the job market, like we said, because it's happening, and I think we have more guardrails in Europe, so the labor unions tend to be stronger as well. So it's not so easy to fire people. Maybe that gives us a bit of time for a better direction. There were extravagant ideas in the Polish government. I think the most extravagant one that didn't go through was sort of the idea to create a list of professions that are protected from artificial intelligence, that only humans could perform in the future. So that's, you know, it's an extravagant idea, but it's an interesting starting point of a discussion about what does this job really entail and which parts of it have to be, you know, I mean, sort of bound to humans because of the questions of responsibility, liabilities, compliance, etc., because of the system that we function in. So yeah, I feel we're trying to contribute to that discussion somehow, and sort of I'm happy to see that there are big discussions on the dual use in Europe, European AI as well. I'm just hoping that we can be a bit faster with it.
And I'd also be very curious in your perception in terms of within Europe, where is doing well on tech sovereignty and where is falling behind. I mean, we hear good things about so Ukraine is obviously an example where the digitization of the state more broadly has been vastly accelerated by the most difficult imaginable circumstance. There are other states like Estonia that have just a generally good reputation on that. I'm not sure what your perception of the UK would be. Probably we're too dependent on US big tech compared to other countries across Europe. Is Poland, would you say, kind of leading away in a particular dimension here?
Well, you know, I mean, I think the UK has an interesting position of a sort of a bridge between, you know, the US and Europe. And I know London has sort of, or the UK more broadly, has hosted an array of different events that were related to Europe's security, AI, and etc. So I think it's very important when it comes to discussions and sort of a hub for maybe certain inspirations on how to move forward with this technology. But I also know that the UK is working on guardrails, significant guardrails and regulations on AI, which I think is an important, bold, and extremely important piece of the puzzle. Ukraine is obviously, I think a role model, unfortunately for them, because of the circumstance, but a role model, particularly in dual use. They're incredible on it. And then Poland is a frontier country in many ways, right? The country whose neighbor is experiencing this terrible war is trying to learn from the Ukraine and cooperate as much as we can to kind of understand better how they've been progressing, advancing so incredibly fast, and what we could learn for them for the sake of security of Europe, the NATO and beyond. Poland is interesting because, Polish people are very prominent in the Silicon Valley. One of the co-founders of OpenAI, Wojciech Zaremba, is Polish, and there is a very big Polish team that joined him that he knew from his high school. So I think at OpenAI, you have in those managerial positions and top positions, 14 people from Poland. And then you have companies like 11 Labs, obviously a big unicorn in speech synthesis, and a couple of others. I think what the problem is, or what Poland is struggling with, is that you have this incredible talent that has been so well educated, particularly in mathematics, statistics, at Polish universities. But then, sort of the local market is supportive in pre-seed funding. If you have your initiative or a concept or an idea for a startup, that early stage can be realized there. And frankly speaking, I think that's a problem for Europe in general, to a large extent, that we just don't have the funding for seed runs and Series A. And I have been advising a very successful Polish startup, Campus AI, that's teaching about artificial intelligence and building sort of virtual districts for AI ecosystem. They're really doing a great job, but it feels like my discussions with them is that they can't keep moving from Poland and they just have to seek funding in the US. So that's like a problem. I know there are discussions about the Union of Capital and how we could, the Europe Incorporated concept, how we could keep those startups and good ideas in Europe and in our respective countries. But just this is also a part of discussion where I would like things to progress a bit faster, because we're losing that brain power, I think. And the moment is good too. Weirdly, here at Harvard, I've experienced the clash between the university and the administration in the US. And some people have made bold decisions, for instance, to return to Europe. Very good researchers, incredible talent, because they don't feel safe. They're not sure whether their grants will be continued, whether they will be funding. Science funding in the US is slashed. It's slightly different from the ecosystem of startups, but still it is a good moment to try and capture or kind of welcome some of the talent that is looking for opportunities. And in that way, I think this is something that Europe should harness, and obviously Poland as well. I'd like to see more of that, and part of the stuff that we do for the Polish Prime Minister, not me specifically, but other people, is about venture capital funding in Europe, or public/private funding in Europe that could support more mature startups to kind of keep them there.